السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll continue with the fiqh of the hearts and some of the work of Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah. And the last thing that we were talking about is as-sama' or listening, or the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala versus disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when it comes to the issue of listening or hearing. And as we know that there are things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala recommended us and commanded us to listen to, like the Quran, like the matters of knowledge and the like of this. And there are things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade us from listening to, like singing and music, backbiting, slander, lying, all kinds of evil things for a person, not just to even say it, but also not to listen to it. And this is where we stopped, which is the second type of things to hear or to listen to when it's mentioned, the sama' or listening to, which is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hates. And as we said that everything has a passage to the heart. So there are two types of things to hear: the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praised, and He condemned those who turn away from it, and they're even cursed, and He made them more deviant than the cattle even. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about the people of the hellfire, they say about themselves, وَقَالُوا لَوْ كُنَّا نَسْمَعُ أَوْ نَعْقِلُ مَا كُنَّا فِي أَصْحَابِ السَّعِيرِ. They say if we would have listened to or na'qil or have reason, مَا كُنَّا فِي أَصْحَابِ السَّعِيرِ, they would say we would not have been from the people of the hellfire. So this is shows clear that which is basically referring to listening to the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. They turned away from it. So this is the, as he called it, هذا السماع أساس الإيمان. This is the foundation of al-Iman, is to listen to the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this has basically three types. There is سماع إدراك بحاسة الأذن, to listen in a way that a person is comprehending what is being said, using one's ears, the ability that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the human beings to listen, the tool to listen with. And سماع فهم وعقل, the listening of comprehending, understanding. Right. So the first one is just, it's not just hearing some voices, but to realize that there is something that is, has meaning to it. And but then the second one is to put one's reason in it and to understand and to comprehend what is being said. And the third one, سماع فهم وإجابة وقبول, the listening for a person to understand, to comprehend, but to accept and to follow. So the way that a person is listening to something, that he's listening with the attitude of accepting it and wants to follow it. And the three types actually are mentioned in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about the jinn, as it's mentioned in Surah Al-Ahqaf, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, actually in Surah Al-Jinn also, it says, إِنَّ سَمِعْنَا قُرْآنًا عَجَبًا يَهْدِي إِلَى الرُّشْدِ فَأَمَنَّا بِهِ. That the jinn says, we listen to a Quran, amazing Quran, that guides to what is upright. And they said, يَا قَوْمَنَا إِنَّ سَمِعْنَا كِتَابًا. The jinn, when they went back to their people, and they said, oh my people, we listened to a kitab, a book that has been brought down after Musa alayhi salam. So this is the level of understanding, that they understood what is being said, and al-Iman and faith was with it, and as a result of that they accepted it. When it comes to those who turn away from the truth, even though they heard what the Prophet ﷺ said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about them, فَإِنَّكَ لَا تُسْمِعُ الْمَوْتَ وَلَا تُسْمِعُ الصُّمَّ الدُّعَاء. You don't make the dead hear, and you don't make the deaf hear the dua. Your dua, it's not heard by them. So that, and that refers to the physical, those who are physically dead, and also those who their hearts are dead. They're not listening to what you're saying. And many verses that comes into that meaning. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also said that about the hypocrites, وَلَوْ عَلِمَ اللَّهُ فِيهِمْ خَيْرًا لَأَسْمَعُهُم وَلَوْ أَسْمَعُهُم لَتَوَلَّوْا وَهُمْ مُعْرِضُونَ. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew in them khayr, goodness, He would make them listen. And if He would make them listen, then they would turn away while they're turning away from the truth. This is with regards to the disbelievers, those who they turned away to start with. They don't want to listen to the truth. The kibr, the arrogance prevented them, whatever things prevented them from listening to the truth. And as for the believers, they say, سَمِعْنَا وَأَطَعْنَا. We listen and we obey. This is the type of listening. And of course, there are both types, both categories of people, the believers and the disbelievers. They hear, they listen, but completely different from one to the other. One would turn away even, they don't want to listen, or they listen, they would listen with the attitude of opposing what is being said, versus those who would say, سَمِعْنَا وَأَطَعْنَا, they are seekers of the truth, and as a result of that, they would accept and they would submit themselves to what they listen to. Also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, which is, again, this is a very serious matter, because we have to protect ourselves from deviation. Many people, they don't know how they get deviated, or they think that they are secure from deviation. And you see that how the more the person lives, the more that you would see people change. Some people, they were steadfast upon what is right, and then they deviate away from the truth. And some people are away from the truth, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide them. So there are things that leads to this. It doesn't just happen like that. And there are many different reasons, but one of which is the fact that a person would allow himself to listen to everything, or a person allows himself to see everything or to watch everything, right? And this is such a dangerous thing for the heart. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about even some of the believers, when it comes to the effect of the hypocrites upon them, they said, وَفِيكُمْ سَمَّعُونَ لَهُمْ. Some of you, they listen to them. They give them their ears. They might be affected by them. And also it refers to those who might spy against the believers and so on. So as Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he said, and this is again for our life that we live in, when someone start to listen to all kinds of things in their life, did they listen to the Quran first? You know, did we give the time to listen to the revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first? A type of a listening that requires for the person to submit themselves to the verses of the Quran, to understand it, to apply it, before a person would listen to something else or these distractions. And it's not just about a free time that a person would spend to listen to things and things that are being said. No, it's something that has to do with deviating the hearts. So as he says, the real sama' or the real good things to listen to is sama'ul ayat, la sama'al abiyat, not the lines of poetry or the things that might or might not be according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. Sama'ul Quran, to listen to the Quran, not to the sama' of the mazamir al-shaitan, the Quran of the shaitan, which is singing and music and the like of this. So to make sure that this is an act of worship of Allah, and this is one of the great benefits we need to learn from this. Like, if this is an act of worship, that means like the same way that a person would start his salah, make wudu and make salah, the same thing we need to make sure that we focus on making sure that we listen to what is benefiting to us, and we listen in a way that we want to be affected. And that's why when you see, you know, for example, when you go to the masjid for Salatul Jumu'ah, what you listen to in Salatul Jumu'ah is different than what you listen to, for example, if you're watching a video on your computer or something like this. Why? Because you took the time out. This is an act of ubudiyya, worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You made wudu, you made ghusl, you went to the masjid, you sat in the masjid, in the best place on the face of earth, and waiting for the Imam to speak, and you're preparing yourself to listen. You're already making sure that you're going to listen to something that you want to benefit from. That's why it's a huge responsibility upon those who give khutbahs, right? That this is, it's first of all, it's ibadah. It's something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us to do. and the people are coming to be obedient to Allah by listening. So there's nothing more acceptable, if it's correct to say, for the hearts than something like this. The same thing when we go to the masajid, when we listen to the sessions of knowledge, and knowledge meaning the wahy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and what help us to understand the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the same thing for the virtual sessions, right? If this is a mean to make it easy for us to understand things, is to deal with it in the same attitude that we, many times people are not listening. For example, they're busy doing something else because it's not really a session where people are sitting focused and listening to what is being said. But if we can, we should do the best we can, that we detach ourselves from everything and we try to listen to matters of knowledge so that it would affect our hearts. And to take the means, and alhamdulillah, many things are been made easy for us. So it's just to take the time where a person is not distracted so that we can benefit from what we learn, inshallah ta'ala. The things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hates, and it's mentioned clearly in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, one of which is sama'ul lahu, which is vain talk. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about the believers, وَإِذَا سَمِعُوا اللَّغْوَ أَعْرَضُوا عَنْهُ. If they listen to al-laghu, vain talk, anything that is of no benefit, they turn away from it. They turn away from it. So this is an act that is required for us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is commanding us whenever there is vain talk or something that is of no benefit, is to turn away from it. Whether it's physically, because again, you can lower your gaze when it comes to your eyesight, but you cannot shut down your ears. So physically, you have to be away, or if you have the ability to turn it off or move away, or if you don't have the means to move physically, then you block your heart from listening to these types of things. Like the disbelievers, they turn away from listening to the truth. And if they listen, they don't allow it to be in their hearts in a way that they would accept it and follow it. The believers, they do the same thing with Allah, with anything that is not according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from them. And that's why, for example, in this ayah, وَإِذَا مَرُّوا بِاللَّغْوِ مَرُّوا كِرَامًا, al-laghu, or the vain talk, or the anything that is not good. Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiya, rahimahullah, he said, هو الغناء, it's singing. They turn away from it. And al-Hasan al-Basri, he said, أكرموا نفوسهم عن سماعه. They honored themselves by not listening to it. So when you listen to these types of things, you degrade yourself. You humiliate yourself. For those who are addicted to it, it becomes difficult for them to turn away from it. But that requires struggle and striving and seeking rewards from Allah and making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's not going to kill the person if he turns away from it. There's a desire to listen, so a person turns away and makes himself busy with reading the Quran, with memorizing the Quran, with listening to what is benefiting. And then one step after the other, one day after the other, it becomes the norm, and the hearts are cleaned from this filth, and instead it's filled with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with, and he keep on being patient to honor oneself. And that's why Abdullah ibn Mas'ud also, he said, Al-ghina ينبت النفاق في القلب كما ينبت الماء البقل. The singing plants hypocrisy in the heart the same way the water plants the vegetations or the things that grows fast. And this is, as Ibn Qayyim, he said, this is someone that knows exactly the effect of singing and music and the like of this. Because no one, as he says, no one would be addicted to it unless his heart will have a level of nifaq or hypocrisy while he doesn't feel it. And nifaq or hypocrisy is not something that a person would be clearly understanding it or feeling it, or he sees that he's munafiq. Actually, the one that would fear an-nifaq the most or fear hypocrisy the most are the believers. So a person, his heart might be full of hypocrisy when he doesn't feel it. And for someone to be always listening to this haram and not turning away from it, right? He would see, if he has the ability, he would see some hypocrisy in the heart. And that's why he says, فَإِنَّهُ مَجْتَمَعَ فِي قَلْبِ عَبْدٍ قَطُّ مَحَبَّةُ الْغِنَاءِ وَمَحَبَّةُ الْقُرْآنِ إِلَّا طَرَدَتْ إِحْدَاهُمَا الْأُخْرَى. He says, as a rule, You can never have in one heart the love of singing and music and the like of that, and the love of the Quran, unless one would push away the other, right? Yes, there can be both present at a certain stage, but they won't. The Quran is aziz, the Quran is honored, does not like to be in a place where there's filth in it. So one has to push the other. So that's why one of the ways to purify the hearts from the love of music and singing and so on is to fill the hearts with the Quran, with busy oneself with the Quran, reciting it, listening to it, and so on. And that's why you'd see clearly, when people are listening to music or standing in concerts and whatever, they don't have any problem standing for hours and they're enjoying what they're listening to. But when it comes to listening to the Quran, it doesn't move them. It does not, it makes them quickly bored and things like this. So, and that's one of the ways of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on earth, that the path to the hellfire is the easiest one, physically, right? And the path to Jannah requires struggle and striving and patience. But the outcome of the striving for the sake of Allah and the everlasting effect of it is something that is, everlasting one. And it is never disturbed, versus the other one, you would find people, they have this hours or time of enjoying themselves, but then after that it's misery. It does not give that satisfaction, and it requires for the person to get more and more, like the addiction of anything, addiction of drugs and the like of it. It's the person, you feel bad for him, but he has level of enjoyment. And the only way for that person to continue is to get more and more. And the more he gets, the more it ruins him. And it takes him away from what is good and the goodness of this life. In which a person, if he's struggling and striving, he would have the real enjoyment of this life when the person is close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And even Ibn Qayyim is talking about those who are listening to music and singing, thinking that this is a religious thing. Like the like of those Sufis, where they would listen to music and singing, and they say that it affects their hearts and it make them feel spiritually good and all of these types of things. This is all from the shaitan. This is something that they invented. But what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us is to be patient with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us. And you would find this is an amazing thing in many things. Right? So it's and it has its, the resemblance of it in some of the physical things in this life. Again, as I said, if someone to enjoy being not intoxicated all the time is much, much better than someone that feels good when he's intoxicated, right? So it's the same thing when it comes to matters of the deen. So there's always this level of patience and being obedient to Allah. And again, when a person does this, he's not doing it for any fun in this world, but rather he seeks rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in hereafter, and he would enjoy more of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala permitted. The Quran, as you talked about the Quran, and to beautify one's voice when a person recites the Quran. And this is a good thing also, one of the things that requires time of work when a person would learn the Quran. And you spend time in learning the Quran and reading the Quran. And then if you start yourself reciting the Quran, and you do the best you can to beautify your voice when you're reciting the Quran, not for others to listen to, but for your own self, you'll have a level of enjoyment when you're reciting the Quran. And the more you fix the portion of the Quran that you recite every day, the more that you would wait for it. And you can't wait till you have that time where you sit on your own to recite the Quran, and you would recite it in a proper way. And then, of course, as you know, requires learning. And it's not, we don't have to get into is it mandatory for every person to learn how to perfect the recitation of the Quran? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most merciful. But why would a person deprive himself from having this level of goodness to listen or to recite the Quran the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us? But once in a while, the Prophet ﷺ would allow things, like, for example, the singing of the girls in the day of Eid, right? This is exceptional, and it's without musical instruments, of course. It's in the categories of like nasheed nowadays, right? And it's the same thing the Sahaba, when they're digging the trenches before the Battle of Al-Ahzab, they would say lines of poetry, right? And things like this. So it's on occasions, they would do these types of things, and there's no harm in it, again, without, of course, musical instruments and the like of this. So this is all goes into the category of listening. So to be careful for what we listen to, and to make it easy for oneself, and to enjoy what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala permitted for us, and not to allow ourselves to like or not to like based on our own self, but rather to see what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. And that in the beginning, as we said, a person might not see it, but then the more the person is sincere, the more the person will have the real enjoyment of this life by being obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and following what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. We'll stop here, inshallah. And we'll continue, inshallah ta'ala, with the next subject, which is an important one that has some effect in our life, which is the issue of a dhawq, one's taste of things, and the different levels of listening, which is, it's not a deep issue, but it's something that has a direct effect on what people do. Many people, they do things because it tastes good, or it feels good, or something of that nature. But we'll do that, inshallah ta'ala, next time. So yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept from all of us. And again, I apologize for the changing of the times because of the time changes and salah and things like this. And we might change again, depends on the timing of the salah. So bear with me, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for coming, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept, inshallah. And also, some of the times I want to not to miss the class every day, but sometimes it's overpowering that I cannot be present at the same time of the class. So I would rather do it in different times of the day, but I know that people might not be having this flexibility. But hopefully, inshallah ta'ala, with the, people being flexible with that, may Allah reward you, inshallah. It's time for the next class, so we'll stop here, inshallah, and go to the Quran session, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم ربنا وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.